I'm going to call to order the Mentor City Council regular meeting of June 18th, 2019. The invocation will be given by Councilman Marn.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling? Here. Mr. Kirschner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Mr. Landing?
Here.
Approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of June 4th, 2019.
Move to approve?
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landing?
Yes.
Public hearings, we have none. Tabled legislation, ordinance number 19-0-022.
An ordinance approving the final subdivision plat of 21 residential lots in the Becker's Landing subdivision and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zima, I'd like to have you comment on this.
Yes, obviously this ordinance remains tabled pending council's action. We've had some discussions, and I believe it's the applicant's request the council move forward as presented. Again, noting that they do take objection to the proposed condition number 2 relative to the reconstruction or improvement as necessary of the entire length of Becker Avenue. I understand that there's been administrative attention to this issue in the form of the engineering department, and they may have further information for council's benefit relative to how it may want to proceed on proposed condition number 2. I think some of my objections relative to Block A and some of the issues that Block A presents still exist as well, and I can elaborate on that further if council desires.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Swiger, you and I had a conversation on this. You indicated you need a little bit more time to look over that recommendation that was made.
Yeah, I believe the last time we looked at what improvement may be necessary to the pavement, and we had considered recommending grinding the surface, taking an inch off the surface and putting back about 3 inches of new asphalt. I think the question that came up earlier today was whether we would reconsider that and I guess allow for maybe not grinding the road, but putting back 3 inches of asphalt on top of the existing surface. So at this point, I would just want to take a little closer look at the surface.
Okay, so you need a little bit more time.
Yes.
Okay. Council,
Move the table.
Second.
Julie, call the roll. Don't
It's
need
on
to
the table.
Don't need to, okay. It's already on the table. New legislation, ordinance number 19-0-037.
An ordinance declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of Mentor to be a public purpose, declaring a portion of such property to be exempt from real property taxation, compensating the school district for revenue not realized, designating infrastructure improvements to be made that will benefit such property, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, these are two properties which we are interested in utilizing for TIF purposes to make improvements to serve them directly. And we usually try to do this once or twice a year, and we are asking for council's consideration.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landing?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landing?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-037 is passed. Ordinance number 19-0-038.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an economic development grant with BEL Environmental Engineering, LLC.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're asking for council consideration on a small ED grant. This is an engineering group that's moving into the city. They would be filling space in the Matchworks building, and we would ask for council's consideration.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-038 has passed. Ordinance number 19-0-039.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an economic development grant with Jennifer Greer, M.D., LLC.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this is actually a retention grant. The applicant will be making an additional investment at a different location within the city. Again, it's a relatively small amount, $3,000 to help with that new relocation.
Counsel.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-039 is passed. Ordinance number 19-0-040.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Tussing Builders LTD for roof replacement in the ice arena and maintenance facility and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this project is actually necessary as a result of some wind damage that the city sustained at two buildings. I'll have Mr. Schweikert give you some details in this momentarily. I will point out, however, that we're working with our insurer right now. We expect that at least some of this, if not all of this, should be covered as an insurance claim. Mr. Schweikert?
Thank you. Earlier this year, a very strong windstorm damaged almost half of the roof of the ice arena and a small portion of the roof of the maintenance facility. In effect, the wind got under the rubber outer layer of roof and separated this outer layer from the insulation layer underneath. Since this time, the Public Works Department has been working with CT Consultants to design the replacement roofs and with the insurance company to verify our coverage. In general, the work will consist of removing all of the existing roof down to the metal decking and installing a new single-ply membrane system with insulation, along with the gutter and metal trim and lightning protection. We opened bids on June 7th for the replacement of these roofs. 2 bids were received for this project, with a low bid submitted by Tuesing Builders Limited with a price of $387,000. This bid compared favorably with the opinion of probable construction cost, which was $495,000. Based on the low bid and a successful reference check, I recommend that this contract be awarded to Tuesing Builders Limited. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flippia, I'm assuming this is considered one event by the insurance company?
I believe it is,
And
yes.
what is our retention on that?
What is the, I'm sorry, what's your question?
Retention, deductible?
I think it's 10,000 in this case. I'll have to verify that, but it's a relatively low number compared to
So we're looking
the
at
amount.
them taking care of about $377,000, hopefully.
Something
Okay,
like that,
thank you.
yes.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance nu-
Retention is the same, means
Yes,
the same as deductible?
Yes.
I learned something. I did not know that.
Okay, ordinance number
Afraid I have an
19
instruction.
Did you know that? Kinda.
Yes, but when you first said it, I'm not thinking in terms of insurance terms most days, but it does help to have an expert in the room.
I'm gonna say that next time.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
When I'm arguing. Go ahead.
Ordinance
say
number
deductible.
19-0-040 has passed. Ordinance number 19-0-041.
An ordinance to authorize revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is simply the appropriation for those roof repairs.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-041 is passed. Ordinance number 19-0-042.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to a mentor incentive grant with Accurate Metal Sawing Service Company and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Conrad, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. This is an amendment to an agreement already in place with Accurate Metal Sawing to allow them to count their temporary services agents placements, which sometimes go to full-time, to count towards their annual payroll in order for them to qualify for their grant agreement.
We're not opposed to this. We've done this with a couple of other agreements, and our verification includes making sure that any withholding for that is obviously within the city of Mentor.
Okay, thank you.
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes. Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-042 has been approved. Ordinance number 19-0-043.
An ordinance approving the final subdivision plat of 3 commercial lots in the Norton Parkway subdivision and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I may defer to Mr. Zeman if he has any comments on this, but essentially, the planning department, Mr. Zampedro, Mr. Zeman, the law department have been working with the developer. This is with respect to, this is actually a minor subdivision lot split that you're being asked. It can't be approved administratively because the map, as you should see attached to your document, does not have, each of the lots that remain do not have frontage, on, in this case, Norton Parkway. The ultimate intention of the developer is to further amend this plat, and you're all familiar with the city's intention to work with the developer to place a public roadway in through tax increment financing. So we're working with them. We expect that amendment would be made, but Mr. Zeman may want to explain to you why this is taking this particular sequence.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we've had a lot of communications with the project developer. I know the representatives are here tonight to answer any specific questions that the council may have relative to the nature of this subdivision. As the council is aware, it's in furtherance of a medical office building that's going to be constructed. These deals are fairly complicated relative to financing and the various moving pieces. While some members of council may be aware that ultimately the property owners may seek a public roadway ultimately to be constructed servicing these 3 parcels. As of now, to move the project forward and to get their financing done and to get to closing, they are requesting approval of the lot split as approved by the Planning Commission. There has been no changes to that. I think as Mr. Filipiak indicated, what's a little unusual is the southerly parcel is really a flag lot. It's got the pole then of the flag extends out to Norton Parkway. That obviously is not the type of subdivision that the council nor the code for that matter, finds favorable. In this particular instance, that is in furtherance of a private access drive. So that private access drive will service all 3 parcels and thereby reduce the number of curb cuts that would be required onto Norton Parkway. So again, it's not what you'd like to see, but it does serve a very, very important and specific purpose. Again, it's for a future date, whether or not ultimately there's a request to have a public right-of-way constructed on there. But for now, this looks like sound planning and is in accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Move to suspend. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes. Move to approve.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Ordinance number 19-0-043 has been approved. Second reading, we have none. Third reading, we have done. Manager's report, Mr. Filipiak.
There we go.
No. I hope I get you to the concert on time.
I think we're going to be ahead of time.
Thank you, Council. We do have one pavement open cut request from Aqua Ohio for necessary to replace a broken water valve on Seminole Street at Ivy.
Move to approve.
Good?
Move to approve.
Second?
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Landig?
No.
Thank you, Council. Just a few items this evening. Just a reminder to the public that this Saturday, Men Are on Tap and Uncorked will be taking place from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Civic Center Park. You get a chance to sample the best craft beers and wines that Ohio brewers and winemakers have to offer and enjoy some great food and live music in the process. This is a 21 and over event, and for ticket information, you can contact menarontap.com or just access our website. City's road striping contractor plans to begin painting late June or early July, and all the work will be done at night. This year, motorists are urged to use extra caution when encountering the painting operation, as they will be moving slowly. We like to invite the public to a memorial candlelight service next Monday for honoring Officer Matthew Mazzani. This will take place Monday, June 24th at 8 p.m. at the Mentor Amphitheater. And again, the public is invited to attend. And then finally, we have two new businesses that we want to welcome to the community. The Great Escape at 9565 Mentor Avenue, and Pizza RX, so pizza prescription, I'm not sure how they go by, at 7361 Center Street. And we welcome them to the community and wish them best of luck. And I know that Mr. Zampedro, who, by the way, is celebrating his birthday today. Happy birthday.
Birthday.
36 years old.
Always feels that
36.
pizza is the best medicine. So,
I'll corral him after.
thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'll
Mr.
bring
Martin.
this up here. This morning at the gym, you normally think something like this is Jim kind of battering back and forth, but I had residents of Mentor complaining about their tax bill that they just received from the county. I'm sure Mr. Blake's going to receive it at his gym, too. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to go to his gym tomorrow and tell Sean. I'm usually here about 7, so.
Yeah.
But I think it would be worthwhile, as you're trying to explain it, and I didn't know, because I just got this today, actually, but, we're the lowest city in the county in terms of, the amount of millage that, we take in from our residents, so hats off to council and administration, both past, present, and future. But all that factors in. So there's other things, of course, that you guys know besides us. Whether it's the schools, library district, anything of that nature. But comparing us being the lowest and the schools being one of the highest, it still puts us as one of the higher taxing entities here in the city of Mentor in all of Lake County. So can we get together and put together, it doesn't have to be something instantaneous, but on our website, maybe in our quarterly newsletter, explaining how this works? Because you try to explain to somebody at the gym and they really don't either want to believe you or believe what you're trying to tell them. And you say, always look at this little sheet right here. But I think it'd be helpful, if we have a little presentation, maybe not the next meeting, but, meeting come September, and then something in the quarterly newsletter.
And just to back up what Scott's saying, they think we have control over that. They think that we're keeping their taxes higher for some nefarious reason. And they don't really dig into that like we dig into it. I haven't been home yet to get that, but yeah, at the gym, we hear a lot.
Especially his
about
group.
these-
His group's relentless. That he hangs with,
They stay informed.
I certainly think it's always helpful when we provide some of those helpful pieces of information, either in the form of a screen or a direct link or something. I'm sure that there's probably something on either the auditor or the treasurer's site, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Maybe Ante can add that to our website.
Yeah,
It's one of those little
Yeah.
stories
If not,
that
or
he likes to do.
we can make that clear. I know all 7 of you have had plenty of inquiries about actions taken by the school district over the years and what you're going to do about it, but This is one of those other examples.
I mean, I even brought that up today, and, you know, the one gentleman said, who owns some business property in Mentor, says, well, we'll be in Eastlake, they're building 2 brand-new high schools. And how are they lower than us? And I'm like, I don't know, that's not my department. You know what I mean? So it's, you don't know what to say besides tell them to look at this and go to the website. So maybe if we could do something to help them, it'd be a lot easier, so us as council and
I think we can
administration
do
can
that
direct
from the
residents.
city's perspective to say, this is all that really gets contributed to the city. The rest goes here, here, and here. Yeah, I
That would
think
be
we can do
helpful.
that with,
And I know our old figure from the actual city, from property tax, used to be about 7.5% was the old rule of thumb. And I haven't asked Mr. Malinowski in a couple of years if that still holds true, and I haven't really bothered to figure it out.
of that total?
Of that,
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure
I think
it's
it's less than
probably
that.
less than
I
that
think it's
now.
less
So
than that.
you tell people where their property taxes go, and they look at you like, once again, we're lying to them, or like Sean said, hiding something, or
God, I
something.
copied and pasted my tax bill on Facebook in a long discussion with people that were hammering the city. So
Right,
I
that's
just
not
like,
us.
okay, end of discussion.
Nobody really pays attention to any of it until they go up.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'm getting a lot of compliments on the night work on 615 widening, how that whole thing came down, the stripping of it and then the repaving. People never even, a lot of people never even saw the workers, and it turned out very well. The night work's working out real good. Good job.
Okay, anything else? Sir?
That's all.
That's it? Well,
it.
thank you. Thank you. Clerk's correspondence.
Council is in receipt of the Mentor Municipal Court month-end report for May of 2019.
Thank you. Commission committee reports. We have the meeting minutes for the Community Arts Commission of March 7th, 2019, and April 4th of 2019. The Municipal Planning Commission work session of May 9th, 2019, and regular meeting of May 9th, 2019. Board of Building and Zoning Appeals for May 14th, 2019, and the Charter Review Committee of May 28th, 2019. Old business, we have none.
Mr. President?
Yes.
If I could just ask a question, Ken, Tony, our tree contractor program, I noticed that the registrations for this year are down, contractors registering with the city. How's that program going? I mean, with less businesses who have taken out license this year, are there any problems? I mean, I know that the emerald ash borer, that tree die-off is in its waning periods. But my concern is I just don't want to go back to days when guys in pickup trucks and chainsaws are jumping out and knocking on people's doors and doing this work without any sort of responsibility for their actions. I thought I'd bring that up to see if we've got enforcement on contractors who are not registered or not.
I think it would be easier for me to try to just follow up with both code enforcement and our chief building official to see just where we stand on that. I'm not aware of any inordinate number of violators that
Okay.
either we've had complaints called in on that we're taking action against, or just our general awareness. I will tell you that it's something like that is always going to be a challenge to us, because it's not surprising when you have a drop in re-registrations, because sometimes these are 1- and 2-person outfits that just don't do business the following year, or don't do business in the city maybe until later in the year, and most aren't going to register until they get a job in the city, if they do. The challenge is having those the new companies aware of the regulation here, and so I'll get an answer for you. I'll inquire on that, and maybe we can stick that in the Friday report.
That would be great. And who is it that actually does the enforcement on that? I mean, if you see a person who's swinging from tree to tree, cutting limbs, and, I mean, who is it that watches over that program to make sure that?
Well, again, and that type of an activity is going to be a team effort, but ultimately the responsibility to register is going to fall under the authority of the chief building official. But our code enforcement officers are almost inevitably the ones that take those complaints or are made aware or observe violators and will make the inquiries street to street. So typically, they'll act under his authority.
Okay, great, thank you.
Speaking of code enforcement, didn't we just get a new chief code enforcer?
We did. Yes, congratulations to Tom Vermilli, who is our new code enforcement supervisor, who's been in that
Congratulations.
acting role for a few months and has been doing a good job.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Okay, that was old business, so I guess we have no new business.
Well, Mr. President, we have a new guest. Want to introduce, first time he's ever here, right? You've never been here, second? Oh, I'm
See,
sorry.
you blew that.
Who's counting? Yeah, Deputy Chief Ronzak. At your service.
Putting out that fire, okay. Persons before council, we have none.
Move to adjourn.
Second.